Moon boy DJ Moon. Hey everybody, welcome into the Creed of Crypto live stream. I am one half of your host, Boi Crypto, and I have here with me, as always, my friend and co-host, Crypto Ewok. Shout out everybody in the chat, DJ Moonboy, Patrick's Astro and stuff, more people pouring in here as well. We're happy to see you all on this lovely Tuesday evening. It's nice and warm where we are right now, which is a nice change here in April. DJ Moonboy is laughing. I'm not sure what at, possibly, but we got a big show for you tonight. We're going to talk about why PulseChain, do something. What is going on with the ecosystem? You know, since we were last on the air with you guys last week, we saw a huge seller that has been apparently doxxed. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So we did see this ecosystem, the PulseChain ecosystem, go down. We saw, of course, Bitcoin go down with the threats of World War III over the weekend, which we're no stranger to those kind of conversations and how it can affect the market and especially crypto. So we'll get into that and a whole lot more tonight. There's a lot going on. Uniswap. Oh boy. So they are now taken on by the corrupt SEC, and a very interesting turn of events as far as Uniswap goes. We've got new CPI data and how it could affect the market for the rest of this year. CPI coming in hotter than normal. A lot of really good stuff that's, we can really kind of get shape of how 2024 is going to pan out here in these markets. So welcome in everybody, Philly, Mr. Chuck, Entheo Sapien. Yes. Welcome in. So Ewok, how are you? How are you feeling this evening? Muted. You're on mute.
I was feeling good. Now I can't even run my own microphone. So
I guess not. No.
Happy episode 100 to you. You forgot again.
I did. Yeah. All week I kept seeing it creep up here. I'm like, oh yeah, it's our 100th show. Should we do it? I'm not really a big we got to do something for the 100th episode guy. But it's cool. We also just reached 4,000 subscribers this last week. So
right. Yeah. Couple milestones. No, it's good. And Patrick said, we have some green candles, which is unlikely for a Tuesday for us as well. So things are, 2 days till the halving. 2 days and whatever it is, 2 days, 18 hours, almost, a little under 3 days. So, that will be somewhat exciting as far as a launch pad to kind of, start these next couple months on our sideways journey for, couple months here, and then we'll get some action, hopefully, and then it trickles down into this ecosystem, and that's the way it usually plays out. It's just a long, grinding road that we have to go through to get where we want to be.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're going to be here. We were talking before the show for a matter of months, kind of with crypto in general. But yeah, not seeing the customary creed of crypto dip. Matter of fact, I bought this morning. And hey, before we even get into anything, everybody should be taking advantage of the GUI on Ethereum right now. We always talk about different ways of bridging to PulseChain. Today was one of those days where by far, not even close, it was much more advantageous to do the traditional PulseChain bridge on PulseChain.com, pay the ETH bridge fee. I paid $7 this morning when it was like 10 GUI, whereas SparkSwap, it was like a $25 once you actually plug in the numbers, it was like $25 basically.
It's 10 right now. You can probably get an average one here. It says 8. So
wow,
looking really good, and take advantage of it while you can.
Yeah, mint some Zen, whatever it may be that you want to do during these times. So maybe some Titan X, stuff like that. So, so welcome in, everybody. Let's talk about BTC a little bit here. And we got a poll question. I'll make sure I say that before we go any further. I know some people here really love the poll questions. And just to kind of get a little bit of sentiment. So what does PulseChain ecosystem need to do from here? Like how many X's from where we're at right now? We're 20% below SAC rate. What does it need to do from here to make it worth your investment? Do you need or want or desire a 10x, 30x, 100x, or a 250x plus? And out of the gate, we actually have a decent amount of votes so far, but 10x leads the way. So a lot of humble folks in here, which is interesting to see.
A lot of underachievers.
It might just be people that have been smacked in the face so hard for 3 years
That's
that
true.
they just want to get out alive.
That's
You
true.
know, but
Very
yeah,
true.
so that's where, but it's very close. That's only 30. It's actually shrinking as I look at it, but 32 to 33% of the vote. 30x comes. It actually goes right down the list. 30x is in second with 28%. 100x at 25%, and then 250x plus at 16%. The other thing is too, like if you have been diligently DCAing over this last year since the launch of PulseChain and everything, you know, what you need may not be as much as what you originally thought. You know, you may have
Yeah.
put money into the ecosystem and bought at prices that you never even dreamed you would see.
Right.
You're like, okay, I actually don't need it to go too crazy. So.
Speaking of DCA, I want to bring something up that I had read, and I don't know if you had heard about it or not, but 9-inch Exchange
Yeah.
has a DCA tool where you put money in and it will DCA for you under your circumstances. Now, the one thing that you do have to be careful of is there is no aggregator tied to it. So if somebody happens to pull liquidity from something that is pretty liquid, you know what I mean? Obviously,
Mhm.
you don't want to do it on a low liquidity token at the wrong time because you could really get a bad deal. But you know, they are working on that. I know Pateus is also working on a DCA tool as well. But
Yeah.
it's live on 9-inch. So you know, if you want a DCA headache free kind of thing, check it out. I've heard a lot of people say good things about it. As long as it's a you know in a liquid type pool, it's a pretty cool you know method.
Yeah, yeah, good opportunity to do that as well. We got Murder Yoga 10p. One of my best friends is cousins with RH. Do not sell. RH will reward the holders. I don't know. All I know is Shane Schuler, Richard Hart's only brother. You know, he's the guy I kind of put all my trust and faith into. So, you know, in terms of
He's not real.
relatives of Richard. Let's take a look at Bitcoin and where we're looking at that right now. BTC plummets over the weekend. Really not that bad of a pullback. I mean, I think it probably went to 60K flat. As we sit
Yeah.
here right now, Bitcoin is at almost 64 again. ETH at almost 3,100. It was at 2,900 just within the last 24 hours, I believe. So we've seen that pullback, and you know we've been expecting this for some time now. Not necessarily in like a capitulation candle after we see some war stuff over the weekend. Not to belittle anything that's going on, but just obviously all of the kind of grifters and political commentators are going to you're always going to hear World War III stuff. That's just what people do for clicks,
Yeah.
obviously. But we expected this either way. It's basically just that now this war thing is going to be the thing that they assign to all this happening, and pick a narrative to fit the chart. I think we would have got here at some point, one way or another, even if it wasn't on one big dip. But I still think we're probably going to go a little bit lower. Again, you and I have been talking about it for some time, Ewok. But you can tell there's a lot of people that seem like they're experiencing their very first kind of crypto dip just with some of the reactions to this. So it does suck that war can be good for markets usually. It is just kind of one of those things. ETH bleeding further against BTC. I think it's down below 0.5 on the ratio now, or 0.05 or whatever that would be. So bleeding a bit. But yeah, what do you make of this move right now? Do you think we have more downside? And what do you think of how BTC is shaping up?
Yeah, I think it does take a little bit more. Not much. Obviously, like I said, the having doesn't always signify the bottom of whatever dip. It can be a couple days before, a couple days after, till the sentiment changes. However, the supply shock is a real thing. It's only going from 6.5 to 3.25, I think, on this one, or something along those lines, that get minted every block. So yeah, I could see a little bit more here. I saw something the other day about creating a CME gap. Again, I'm not sure where the gap is, because there's still a lot of things that when this went from 51 up to 63, I think there were a lot of gaps left in here, because this move happened pretty quickly. However, we've been there before, so they could have filled back here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once you get into territories that are unknown and uncharted, like anything over 70, if it makes a quick run, you can almost always guarantee that it's going to pull back into that zone to fill those gaps that are created, just for whatever reason, because the
Mhm.
market moved past it, you know. So, yeah, I can see a little bit more of a pullback. I don't see it. I mean, it seems to have so much strength right now. Now, the RSI doesn't really show that. It shows more of a, okay, it's going to go sideways, but there
Mhm.
is a lot of room for a nice run up though when it's ready to go. So this is, you know, this is really kind of just showing a sideways movement that's about to happen. So it might not get below, you know, 58 or so. It might, you know, it could pull back to here. I think, but it's just been so strong. And another thing that you've got to look at is this Bitcoin dominance. You know, it's still 55.7% right now, and that's after the pullback. It was up to 57%, which is really high. It just means that the altcoins just have not had their turn quite yet. So, you know,
Mhm.
once this actually does flush out and we get the run, and people start, you know, pivoting over into altcoins, and you see this start to head down, that's when, you know, the fun begins for the ecosystems like ours. I think, but for now, I don't see it. I don't see it. It's been so strong. There's been a lot of things propping it up, and this move down, it really wasn't, you know, it wasn't all that terrible. Um, Even from here down 16%. So,
Right.
you know, it wasn't terrible. So when you're saying that you're seeing people that have never experienced a dip before, eugh, um, look out. That's not really that wasn't that bad. And
Not
if
at
they're
all.
freaking out after that, you know, I do worry about people.
Yeah, not at all. That's really not that big of a deal. But yeah, I could definitely see getting back to 58, if not lower than that. And kind of taking a longer look through the rest of this year. You know, we've had a lot of discussion lately because we are right here on the precipice of the Bitcoin halving. So it's like kind of make or break over the next few months in terms of seeing like what is the situation we're in. I mean, like we're in a bull market, that's clear, but what are the likelihoods of the left translated cycle, which more and more people are favoring? That you know, because we are, and the only reason I think it's getting as much talk as it is because BTC already hit a new all time high this year, which nobody expected to happen. So you know that would require getting back to business by probably 6 weeks from now, like late May, and really blowing off the second half of this year. I'm hoping that isn't the scenario. I think some doubts starting to creep in now that we've seen pullbacks from a lot of people, obviously. I would much rather see us, you know, just kind of have this dead zone where BTC just kind of consolidates for a long time and hopefully ETH can kind of close that gap a little bit. Like you said, Ewok, we do see more of an altcoin run. And that's not to say like that Bitcoin dominance, it's not to say that some alts haven't run. I mean, we did see like meme coin season
Sure.
galore, you know, throughout Solana and everything like that. And I think what some of those people are going to be sorely mistaken about that are holding some of those bags still is like that was their part of this cycle. I don't think we're going to see, you know, you and I have both. Well, everybody was singing the praises of Solana, like said that I think there's limited upside here for where it could really go this bull cycle. And I think we're going to
Yeah.
see that as things perk back up. And, you know, why don't you speak for a minute too, Ewok, because you've seen this before in multiple cycles of like different seasons of things, you know, not just
Yeah.
Bitcoin, but also like, okay, this sector pump, then that sector pump. And it's like this altcoin ecosystem, its bull market really may have topped at the beginning of the overall Bitcoin bull market. And then this other ecosystem, like Hex, for example, before peaked in September of 2021. So like much
Right.
later, you know, so talk about the different timing of different ecosystems like that. And we'll in a little bit, we'll get to like PulseChain. Could it duplicate something like what Hex did and kind of be a laggard? But yeah, how
Yeah.
about like different ecosystems like that?
Well, yeah, I mean they all take turns. There's not enough economic energy, I don't think, for all of them to run at the same time. So they all kind of take turns. It depends on each one has its own thriving, you know, community that pumps things. And you can see here Solana didn't even hit its previous all-time high. So You
No.
know, how far down will it go on this, and will it pump to that? It's possible. I think it could break its previous all-time high. It's strong enough that it's got enough community, but I don't know, I don't know how much higher it'll go. I know there's people out there talking about getting to $1,000. Um, eh, I wouldn't bet on it, but
No, I wouldn't either.
I've seen crazier things happen when the money starts flowing out. Um, Crazier things have happened to different ones. I mean, you look at even Aave is still way, way down from its previous. So that one hasn't had any kind of chance yet. Like I said, they all kind of take turns. It's weird how it goes, and everybody kind of picks a time or whatever to rally the troops. And yeah, I totally agree with you saying that Hex, PulseChain, those type of things. I think there'll be a trailing, a very lagging pump as far as the rest of the market goes. I think it'll be one of the last ones. RH is the type of guy that likes to talk numbers, likes to talk things, and say, "Hey, this thing's running now. This is one of the only things that's running now." And I think it could just kind of light a fire and be one of the very last ones to pump before we head back into another bear cycle. Now, I don't think that'll happen until after 2025. So don't take that as it's already over type message, and we got to endure this whole thing again. That's not the case, but I think there's a lot of good to come. I think it's going to be sideways up, a bunch of stair steps for us anyway, till we get to where we need to be. But it's really going to depend on sentiment and how this Bitcoin market does play out. This is a different one, right? We've got the ETFs now, so we'll see how it really takes off, and how quickly does it get to 100 grand? Does it even get to 100 grand by the end of the year? I don't know,
Right.
but that could really depend on how much money does pivot out and when into the alt markets. And if it goes that high pretty quickly, I could see things starting a little bit sooner than people anticipated in 2025 for some of our ecosystems.
Yeah, I think the higher that Bitcoin would go by the end of this year, the quicker we'll start to see things happen
Yeah,
in
for
2025.
sure.
But definitely not preferring the left translated cycle thing. I mean, hoping that maybe we just consolidate here as far as Bitcoin goes for 6 months, like in a certain kind of range, and then things really move up a bit at the end of the year, and then things look kind of like a normal cycle, like we're accustomed to seeing. So we'll see how that plays out. Looking at the PulseChain ecosystem prices, so yeah, we will get into kind of the gigantic sell that happened last week, and to kind of in part be a catalyst to where the prices are right now. But we got Pulse actually moving up a bit, as Patrick said earlier. It's 20% below SAC rate right now. PulseX at this is the real insane one, but 69% below SAC rate at the moment. Incentive token at 375. Hex at 0.8 of a penny, and eHex, if anybody is interested at all, at 1.6 tenths of a penny, I guess you would say. Hundredths. There you go. Yeah. So that is where we're at overall. And what I was mentioning a moment ago. So this Nick Cherry guy, I don't know him, you don't know him, but apparently he was one of literally one of the top 3 people that benefited from being in Hex early. Has allegedly made millions and millions off of it and things like that. I guess there was speculation. I think it was actually Dylan. Yeah, it was Dylan on with Corey, Geary, and Dane on Friday, I think, who was saying that they were able to deduce basically through looking at like LinkedIn and stuff like that, that the guy was a dev for Coinbase in some way, or like involved with Coinbase and had moved a lot of it over to Base or whatever. But yeah, he sold 3 million worth of Pulse in one go. 3 million Pulse wouldn't quite hurt the price that much.
No.
But looks like he's totally out of the ecosystem now. The Pulse price it was freaky. If you were watching any of that Friday morning, I mean, it went down hard and fast, and there was a big wick down. I mean, the whole way down to I think about 55%, 45% below sack rate. But it did start to float back up to this level of support that we're at right now. Everybody's been talking about the key number of like 4 zeros in the 7-9, 4 zeros 8 or so, which is where we're sitting literally exactly right now. It was interesting to get him out. I mean, it's one of those things, kind of like the whole war timing with BTC is just like, were we going to come down and touch these prices anyway? Whether it took a little bit longer, or whether it was because of one whale capitulating or whatever, we were probably going to get here at some point. So what do you make of that? And if you wanted to pull up the pulse chart, we can look at that for a minute too, Ewok.
Yeah, I before I do that, want to acknowledge Nonstop Hex. Thank you for the $20 super chat. Hex postcards design contest alert. First place wins 800. 4 days left to submit your design that could onboard the wealthiest people in the world to Hex and PulseChain. Thank you for the super chat. And if you have a link or something that you want to post that we can pass along, please do it in the chat.
I know I checked those out before. I sent it to you one night. Coffee tweeted about it like 2 weeks ago at this point. And there were some actually really cool ones. But yeah, I don't remember what the link was. So Nonstop Hex, if you're still here, drop that as well.
Yeah, drop a link for us. We'll share it for you.
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
Yeah, but there were some very cool ones for sure. But anyway, yeah. What do you think?
I forgot what your question was.
Well, so Nick Cherry getting shaken out of the
ecosystem. Oh, Nick Cherry, yes,
and so getting to that price, and then the pulse.
Yeah, I mean, so he pulled out like, I think he was, like you said, in the top 3 as far as earners, as far as value extracted. I do believe he has pulled out $16 million total, but again, he is out completely. He's gone. He's washed. So glad that he's getting out at these prices. He's extracted enough for a long time. So yeah, I mean, times like this, man, this is what we need to happen. And I really think will be more. I think there will be more people that get shaken out, which is good. It's good. It's healthy for the ecosystem. It's healthy now because you don't want them to sell later. It's not hard to figure out that you'd rather have a whale get out while the price is cheap than you would when it's expensive and really extract a lot of value, because then they've got a lot more economic energy to continue to do it. So, at this point, like I said, I'd rather see these guys get out now and wash their hands with it. And only the people that believe and have been here will prosper. And, it's part of the game that we play. Hopefully the people that, for the majority of most people buy tops and sell bottoms. And that's how the market cleanses itself and primes it for the next run up. There are very few that buy low and sell high like he did. He was one of the lucky ones but again, he's out. So we don't have to worry about him anymore. He may buy back in when things go crazy. And at that point, he may have a lot of economic energy to pump the price again, which, we know now what kind of wallet that'll be. It won't be a long time holder. And so one of the people you've got to watch out for. But again, they're out. So let's move on to continuing washing and cleansing out the rest of them that don't believe. Hopefully we can do that. I think 50 weeks shakeout will last a little longer than 50 weeks because we should be almost there in terms of 50 weeks to shake out the losers that don't believe.
Basically another week, one more week, basically.
Yeah, we're getting close, but I wouldn't mind it going a little bit longer, and I think it probably will, and really cleanse the dirt and get rid of it. It'll really springboard after that, I believe.
What do you say? Let me ask you this, and we'll just look at the pulse chart real quick. But what do you make of this? Because people are saying, like, how long are we going to be dealing with some of these toxic hex OGs that made so much money and are just going to keep holding this ecosystem down by cashing out, not believing in the long-term vision? Because it's one of those things where, like, I understand newcomers to the ecosystem feeling that way, that haven't had their chance to kind of make hay yet, despite their long pain and suffering and holding and
Right.
DCAing and all that stuff. I understand that, but then also, not that I necessarily have like empathy for any of these whales that are dumping or anything, but they also have lives to live, and it's like, hey, it's my money, like I'll do what I want to with it. So
Sure.
but yeah, what do you make of that though? The people that are worried, like, oh my god, all these like OG hexicans are gonna dump and stuff like that, or some of these guys that have faded away that used to be, faces that were out there streaming. We obviously have some great ones like yourself, Crypto Coffee, Matty Allen, Johnny Chaos, like all these people that were around and are still visible, but then a lot of people who aren't. But like, what do you make of that fear that it's like, oh, there's all these hex OGs with all this money that are just going to dump on me and stuff?
Well, the perfect time to buy it is now. I mean, you're not going to get these. I think it was 3 years ago. The price was around here.
Yeah.
And if you're not, if you're feeling that way and you're not buying it and trying to accumulate so that you can get a bunch on the next cycle, then I don't know what to tell you. Then you're just going to bitch and complain about it anyway, right? You're just going to be unhappy because somebody's got more money than you, or somebody got in when you didn't, or maybe you wanted to but didn't. Um, it still goes back to delayed gratification, and if you can buy at these prices, time it and wait 6 7 years, even maybe 8 years, two years or two cycles from now. um who knows what the price will do, but it's a long shot, and I think it's totally worth it. I think this whole thing's going to come back. It's got to rinse. Yes, there were a lot of people that minted a lot of money in the beginning, and they were rewarded with it. They got in early. You don't understand the amount of hate and gatekeeping and all
Mhm.
the death threats and things like that those people that you're bitching about went through. They held, they believed, and now maybe they are selling out a little bit, but good. Now's your time. Richard always said, I wanted to design this so that there would always be meat left on the bone for the next guy. And here you go. Here's the meat on the bone. You're looking at prices right now that, once this stuff is gone and once the supply dries up and people start taking it off the market, these prices are going to go crazy. There's very little out there. If you look at Hex Daily Stats, um, and look at the staking number, like the people that are staking. I'm going to pull it up actually because I want you to see this, and it's not. Um,
While you're pulling it up, I want to make another point that you're not saying that I think is a good point for those people too to realize about, like, if you're afraid of, oh, these hex OGs are going to dump or whatever. I mean, there's really not an ecosystem out there at this point that is more organic than the PulseChain one that you can go get involved with instead, that has, not only will it have even bigger whales dumping on you, but it will be like venture capitalists that you had no idea that they even got the pricing that they got,
right,
like seed rounds prior to Solana launching or whatever, other chain you want to use. With Pulse Chain, like, you can see all this stuff happening. We know who the people, like, literally the people get doxxed practically. So you're not going to have that on other chains, and the dumps will be even bigger. So I mean, this is just kind of a necessary evil with some of these markets in crypto, especially, that is going to exist. And it's kind of the price you pay for being in a volatile asset like this that you're not going to see, as much in the stock market and stuff like that. So just something else to
right.
keep in mind.
Yeah,
But
I'm looking for it, and I don't know where the hell it's at. I saw it the other day.
well, why
It's
don't
not a big
we?
deal. But anyway, the number of stakers goes up continuously. It's not reflecting on the chart, but there are people buying it and there are people staking it. So,
Mhm.
I really think that it's slowly drying up, and eventually it's going to get to the point where there's not a whole lot for sale.
Yeah,
So,
and T-shares getting more valuable as well.
well, the t-shirt price goes up every day too. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Do you want to just pull up the pulse chart and we'll just take a quick
Sure.
look at it to see where we're looking, and to see, because again, this number that we're sitting at exactly right now as we start the show is really a number that a lot of people were calling out as support. I think it is the 21 EMA. I think it's like sitting right at that point, or the weekly super trend maybe. and it did close like just technically below there the other day, like very, very close. I was watching it towards the time that came up. But I mean, you can see we've taken a bit of a bloodbath here over the last few weeks. But this is a key level to not go far beyond. Now, we definitely wicked far below it on that Nick Cherry market dump, which he paid like so much in slippage for too.
Yeah.
But I think as long as we stay here and can, midterm bounce off it here, I think that we're going to be in okay shape. So what do you make of this price action here?
Yeah. It's recovering. It's right. It's in recovery mode. We didn't break the last set of lows, which was right around 4 zeros and a 5. That was like our last level right here. It did get down to 6662 or so, roughly.
Number of the beast.
Yeah, the number of
Yeah.
the beast. But it has recovered, and there's see a little pennant forming here. It's kind of closing off. The volume isn't real high either. Yesterday there was today, earlier today, there was a fair amount of buy volume, so it just didn't push it up. Again, I think we're going to have some slow, steady. It may kind of come back into this territory where you're going to see this a little bit. A little stair step up with some red candles mixed in between. I'm not a huge TA guy. I just look at the patterns and can kind of see what happened before. There isn't a lot of history, though. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot to go on. So, yeah, I mean, anything at this point could happen because there are people that are not happy and could get washed out. There's a lot of big bag holders too. But I think once things take off, people will be a little bit more reluctant to sell so low, and even wait for it to 2x at this point, and then get out. So, I think we take a nice healthy run back up here to the 1.5 area, before we see another big sell-off, unless people just get totally complacent and want to get out. Doesn't answer your question really, but it's really hard to say. There isn't a whole lot of data.
Well, I definitely think that, like, as far as sentiment, I mean, we saw extreme negativity and anger and stuff on Twitter. I think it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now, to the point where you and I were talking about it's just not even going on there anymore. And after that period, it seemed like it just kind of turned into a ghost town almost. It just seemed like people weren't even really speaking about it, which is always a great time. Like, that's when you feel good, because it's like, okay, like now these people have at least, mentally capitulated for now and have shut up anyway, which is usually about the time that things start going up. We didn't go up though. We went a little bit further down, but I'm still not seeing the kind of negativity. I mean, you'll see like a sparse, like some account I've never heard of before saying, "That's it, I'm done with PulseChain. This is not what I signed." You know what I mean? You will still see that. But I'm not seeing any kind of like overall huge, terrible sentiment right now. I think it's kind of just, you and I said this before the show, like, we all know we're in a bull market. It's kind of just like we're in that boring, okay, we know we're here now. It's a pullback. I don't know how long this is going to last, but whatever. I think that's kind of where people are at right now. So,
yeah, I agree. I think people get that kind of that bored, oh, well, it is what it is kind of thing, so that right before the disbelief. So when it does run, someone's like, this isn't it, or whatever. I think we're in that lull period before the disbelief phase. But yeah, I mean, I think the people that are content waiting are going to be rewarded heavily. The ones that don't believe, we need to get them out. And like you and I we've both kind of taken somewhat of a break from Twitter, from X. It just, keep in mind, it is toxic, and not all the investors are on there. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the real world that people just don't go there, or don't post their feelings and everything that they're doing on there, so you got to keep that in mind as well. There's a lot of outside people that will influence this price as well, that aren't even on X or Twitter. So
very true. Cool. Well, this has been good so far. I didn't expect our first like two things to take almost 40 minutes, but they did. So good conversation. If you guys are enjoying the stream so far, do us a favor, support Real DeFi PulseChain, support our channel as well. 100th episode. We appreciate you guys being here. Smash the like. We do this every Tuesday night, although not next week. We're going to fill you in on that here a little bit later, but usually every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's move on to this. We didn't get into this a lot last week, and I want to bring up Bitfinesse's tweet. That's actually not the one I wanted to bring up, so sorry, Bitfinesse. I wanted to bring up, was it Pepe Olivar? Yes. Okay. If you want to get rid of the pulse chart, Ewok, I wanted to show. He says great things are coming for our first anniversary. Testnet has had a lot of activity in PulseX. So last week we were going to really make this show about some of these potential updates that it looks like are coming to PulseX. Then Frank Molina had to come crash the party. So I kind of had to ditch some of that stuff.
We love Frank. We love Frank.
Love Frank, and the clips of that have been up all week, and people are loving them as well. But we did, of course, talk a lot of PulseX with him. We didn't necessarily get to talk about some of the news that has come out about PulseX over the last couple of weeks. And what a journey it's been for PulseX, in this ecosystem. Not to continue talking about price and stuff, but it was like, okay, before PulseChain launches, you got K4K and Westcott and all these people, 14,000X, and just that PulseX is basically the cock of the walk. It's what everybody's talking about, and it's going to do all this, and the buy and burn's amazing and all this stuff. So PulseChain launches, and it all falls flat on its face, especially PulseX. The ratio widens; it falls further than anything else, goes down 90+%, and is still ravaged basically at 70% down. But it has, it basically hit sack rate for a very small period of time. But the buy and burn is working, and basically we found out that like too many people or more people sacrificed for PulseX, more money sacrificed for PulseX, and that's why we saw it fall so hard. Now it's almost like we're seeing this amazing recovery story of like, well, wait a minute, where it's like the contrarian thing, and when things start to pump, PulseX is pumping pretty hard with the Ink token and stuff like that. And, people are getting excited about the buy and burn again, and not, when prices were even further down, it was like, where is single-sided staking and all this shit? So now we're starting to see, it would just be such a great arc for PulseX for it to like then go back and do like crazy amounts of X's this cycle after it's just, had a sentiment chart that's gone like this. Yeah. But we have seen some updates on the testnet. Do we have updates for PulseX on the horizon? So the same person who deployed PulseX on testnet v4 recently also forked the Pancake Swap stable swap contracts, which would be like the implementation of Curve Finance AMM. This would help with impermanent loss, making it less impactful, and also lower slippage on orders. So we are seeing that, and I had a tweet of that bookmark from a couple of weeks. This is like a week and a half old news at this point, but I think it kind of got swept under the rug because I haven't heard too many people talking about it, and we are seeing that, and it would make so much sense for some of these PulseX upgrades to not just happen right out of the gate, let people suffer for a while. Oh, this thing sucks. Why am I holding it? And then as things start to move up, these upgrades that may have been planned for all along start to come in. The other thing we saw is someone is testing privacy polls on testnet v4 too, which is, I think, probably the even more interesting thing because Richard Hart has talked about that before. What could be coming here in terms of the privacy stuff on the testnet, and how could it be for the ecosystem? I'm going to try to find these bookmark tweets to add some extra color here, but what do you think of both these pieces, Ewok?
Well, yeah, I think all along it was to just release it in the, minimum viable working thing that they could get out because people were bitching so much that it was taking so long. And I think the plan all along was to let's make it work. Let's make it work strong. We don't want it to fail, obviously. And we'll add functionality as we go. After we get some people shaken out, we'll probably start to add things. You'll start to see maybe that elusive single-sided staking that we've been all waiting for. People were so loud about it when it didn't launch with it. And, personally, I have mixed feelings about it. First, it would have locked people in, right? It would have allowed them to earn more, whatever it was earning. Whether I don't think it would have been PulseX because it is deflationary.
Yeah.
So it would have possibly earned incentive token. Well, we didn't want those people earning incentive really, because I think a lot of those people still didn't believe, but would have just been earning more power to dump anyway. So I think all along the theory was to let's shake some people out before we start adding these functions. It'll give us time to work on it in the background without people, being all over our backs about when PulseChain type thing. So it's great. I think the privacy thing is something that a real DeFi should have, right? It's one of those things where Richard has always talked about it wanting privacy for many reasons. If you have a business, you want to be somewhat anonymous with if you're paying people. You don't want everybody to know how much everybody else is making, things like that. You don't want your vendors or whatever to know what price you're spending on supplies or whatever it may be. Anyway, there's a lot of good reasons for privacy, and very few of them are nefarious reasons. So Richard has always been a very strong proponent of that. So that will be, I think it will probably one of the first ones to implement something like that fully. So again, I don't know the details of it. I don't know if it's just the swap. I don't know if it's part of the overall chain as far as PulseChain goes. But I'm excited about it as well. I don't know that I'll have any reason to use it, but then again, why wouldn't you? I don't think it hurts anybody to be private with your transactions, so that's good. As far as the Curve finance thing, I think that's fantastic as well. I don't remember using it on testnet before. I did use testnet, but I don't remember the function that it provided. So I will be excited to learn more about that.
Yeah, and I think regardless of how interested any one of us may be in either of those facets, just the fact that it does look like more things are coming to PulseX, could we have limit orders soon? You mentioned single-sided staking, things that, maybe, we're going to hold PulseX no matter what. And we know just with the buy and burn alone, how valuable this is. Like there is no DEX in crypto that has that fee switch activated. Uniswap basically does the opposite, and we'll get to that trash in a minute. But it already is such a valuable product, and people just can't picture that. Like just the simple fact of seeing the buy and burn creep up and seeing that it's almost at 4% now, seeing even if it is meme tokens at the moment, like trading hardcore on PulseChain. I just think that people need more stuff. And I think, it was a wise move not to launch it with everything you planned on adding in. And that goes for any project in crypto or really any market. Why would you, if you are trying to take advantage of the long term and investors and you want to keep things coming and you can release something with not necessarily bare bones, but with everything that it needs to operate flawlessly, that, just people's excitement is going to carry it for a little while. Wait and introduce that other stuff later when the rest of the market is pumping. I think it's a terrific plan. And, it's people have had to remind themselves like how powerful the buy and burn is, and that's really the reason that you are holding this thing long term, as we talked about with Frank last week. So
yeah,
I
we're
love
at
it.
3.98% burnt
Wow.
so far of the supply. So almost 4%.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that close yet. So very awesome indeed. So good things coming for PulseX. I think, I don't think I'm alone in thinking this. Just kind of seeing more and more people talk about it and the sentiment towards PulseX. I think people are pretty much as bullish on that as just the Pulse token at this point. People are realizing that like, okay, well, the Pulse token's like ETH. It's like the gas token. It's like I have to have it. It's the ecosystem. I think PulseX is kind of this cycle's hex for people. And I'm not saying that like in terms of the product it is and what it does or anything like that, or what like a smart contract versus a DEX or anything. I don't mean like that, but I just think that it is like the new innovation in this ecosystem that is the sexiest one to own that you can see what it has going for it, and people are excited about it because it does have the shiny new object syndrome, whereas Hex doesn't as much. And you can see that it's a unique protocol that nobody else in crypto has. So I think that it really has that behind it. And doing, of course, the LPing and the yield farms with Pulse and PulseX right now and earning Ink token. I think people love that. I love it. I mean, I love being able to do that right now.
And
So
it's odd to see people that aren't a fan. I think we mentioned it. Maybe we didn't mention it. You and I talked about it. How some people like Dane and
Corey,
Corey
yeah,
are against it, and I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand you. There's a very little risk, I would say, even between a PulseX pair at this point. If you're in it for the longer term, you know, the ratio will fluctuate. You will end up with a little bit more of either, but because they're paired together in a very heavy liquidity bond, they're going to move up together. So even if money, some big buyer comes in and gets one, they're going to both move together. So yeah, I just don't understand how some people are just really against it, but to each their
yeah.
own. More
I
INC for me.
those were some notes I made a couple of weeks ago because I was watching those guys and they seem to be down on LPing as a whole. Now I do understand it, like when you're talking about with the stables, because then you're
Right.
dealing with like crippling and permanent loss,
Yes.
possibility. And I know Corey himself mentioned getting hit hard on the PulseX Inc. farm before, but they were even down, like you said, on the Pulse and PulseX pool. And just reiterating, I mean, like the ratio I check every other day or so. The last time I looked, I think it was like 2.6 or something like that, Pulse X to Pulse. But even if it would move in a direction like 50% from here, like it could go the whole way up to, I did the math the other day. I mean, like to 3.5 to 3.75 area or something, which we haven't seen since like the launch, like since Pulse X was ravaged, basically.
Right.
It could even move that much. And you'd still only have like 2% in permanent loss, and you are easily being covered by the ink gains you've made if you've been doing it for any amount of time.
Sure.
Really. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and my camera, I'll fix that in a minute. But yeah, I don't really understand being against that one. I think it's terrific, and it's pretty hard to really lose money on it overall. So,
Yeah, especially that pair. Like I said, I do agree with you. Be very cautious about your stable coin with whatever it is. But if you have two coins that you really like, no matter what, yes, even like some of the pairs, we'll use Axis and Solid X, whatever they are. If you have both of those and you want to provide liquidity and earn fees, things like that, something that you don't mind having one or a little bit more of one or the other, um, impermanent loss can only really hurt if there's a token that you don't want more of at this point when things are running up, especially more like a stable coin. If you're 50-50 with a coin and a stable coin, and you end up with a whole bunch more stable coin and a lot less of the one that just ran to the moon, that's unfortunate. So that's why I can see practicing a lot of caution.
And that's why people should keep in mind too, if you're entering into an LP position, you want to have a long-term mindset with that. I know people get so sick of like, hex staking and delay gratification, but I mean, that's what you have to do with this, and I'm not saying long-term, like 15 years. I'm just saying long-term, like you want to be doing this for like 6 months at least or so. Like if you want to be providing LP for some time, that way the swings, it keeps swinging back and forth, and you're just riding along with that. And then keep in mind, this isn't like a hex stake or something. This is just providing liquidity. So you can go in at any time, pull it if you're not comfortable with it anymore. You can harvest your ink rewards at any time. You can even sell them for something else if you want. Sell them back into whatever token you missed out on, whatever you want to do. It's basically just like a little money printer running in the background. So, I mean,
I think ideally a full cycle is probably an ideal amount of time to where you can get the full spectrum of it going up and coming back down, and you may end up right back where you were as far as number wise of tokens.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. So keep a long-term mindset when it comes to the LPing like that, and I think you're pretty much going to be good to go. And as long as the APY, like the APY on it, has basically been for the last few months, like as the lowest I've seen is about 15%. It's been up to like 22%. We've seen Ink token at almost like a 2x from where we sit right now. So keep in mind when things
$10.
start pumping again, it's just like hex stakes in the past and stuff. Like when you're accruing all this ink right now and then suddenly the prices start to shoot up, I mean, you're going to see the benefit of it, as things start to move up. So keep that in mind. So yeah, great stuff in the works for PulseX. Very excited for sure. If you guys are enjoying the stream, do us a favor and hit the like. We appreciate all of you being here tonight. Let's talk about this Uniswap thing. Karma comes back. Karma's a bitch. Karma comes back around. Uniswap Labs. So when everything happens with the corrupt SEC suing Richard Hart and somehow suing blockchain entities as well, Uniswap takes it upon themselves to delist Hex, so you can't trade it on their platform anymore, and it just disappears. When we know that they are already in bed with a lot of these organizations and are corrupt scum themselves, really, and you shouldn't use Uniswap as a DEX. I would use CalSwap if you can, or really anything else. But they now receive a Wells notice from the SEC, which is very interesting indeed. Not that we're rooting for that, but it's interesting to see these kind of things happen when you don't take a stance in the market prior. Richard Hart actually tweeted about it. It was the first news I saw about it was from him. He tweeted about them getting a Wells notice, notifying that the SEC is about to sue them as well. When will people realize that Richard is correct, that everyone I'm trying to read my notes here that I don't remember writing. Okay. So it isn't just him that is having the SEC come after him. It's the industry right now. Like, we all do know that, I think. We've seen the XRP thing. We know that SEC is just throwing everything at a wall and seeing what sticks. It comes after Richard Hart. It's like, oh, because some people don't like Richard Hart. It's like, I don't really give a shit about that one. But they just keep coming after people, and they're not going to stop. So I'm just wondering when, from the Richard Hart angle of it, people are going to realize that. But to a point that you mentioned, Ewok, I mean, will Uniswap remove the Uni token now that, like they did Hex, now that they are, since they're in bed with Gensler, but also being, taken on by him. So in a way, is this kind of just like misery loves company for, not that we're in misery, but I mean, like for people that are dealing with the SEC, just like, Uniswap, look what happened to you guys. Like, we just like it because of that reason. Or is this really an opportunity, though, to band together and say, hey, you may have shit on us, you may have censored us multiple times in the past, and whenever this SEC stuff happened, but it's time for us to let bygones be bygones and try to fight this fight together. I mean, what's kind of your attitude on that?
Yeah, I think that's the way it'll, eventually play out. I do believe that Richard is the bigger man in this situation, literally, but no.
Well, I mean, Hayden Adams is a very, if you want to talk about like kind of a small soy type, individual.
No, I know.
Yeah, Richard literally is bigger than him. But anyway, go ahead.
I think it'll play out that way. You're gonna have the influencers that are like, screw you guys. This is karma coming back to bite you in the ass for what happened, and completely get it. I would not. Well, at this point, it doesn't really matter. We do have other options. But I think it'll play out in favor of Uniswap, because if we can kind of get this ball rolling first, Richard wants to protect people. He's always been out to protect people, whether they come at him or not. You know what I mean? I think, he wants to be that saving grace. He wants to be known for doing that. And I think the precedent that gets set in his case will definitely impact the one for Uniswap. So if those guys are smart, they'll pay attention and eventually come around. Well, will they relist Hex or delist Uni? I doubt either one of those will happen right away anyway. We'll have to kind of probably see as far as a ruling goes until that happens. But I think it's one of those, what's good for everybody isn't always good for me kind of things. Um,
Mhm.
and they're not going to punish themselves and their own token just to prove a point. It's not going to happen. Although they should, but
No,
it won't happen.
definitely not.
Now I know even when they delisted it kind of from their front end, we had other workarounds because I think there's still liquidity pairs on Uniswap for it.
Mhm.
So I don't know if they've all been disabled. I know ETHEX.com worked for quite some time. But I recently looked for that and couldn't find it. It didn't work or didn't load. So I don't know if there are any other front ends out there for Uniswap. You can't really remove it if there are liquidity pools that are there. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, it's there. It's just kind of hard to access. You have to build your own custom front end. I do know Alex from Hedron had the one. I forget. I don't totally even forget what the link was for that, but
It's
there were
just if
ways.
you go to Hedron, yeah, if you just go to hedron.pro, I was just
I think
trying
it
to
was
do it from
swap.hedron.pro.
yeah, yeah. Either way, it was basically the swap feature on the Hedron website. Is a workaround you could have done. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's still working or not. So it'd be something interesting to check. But either way, I think it all plays out in their favor. Where, like I said, we get a ruling for the our ecosystem's case, and I do think that the precedent that gets set will help them. Unless I'm totally reading this the wrong way, I think things will go in our favor eventually, which will cause them to have some legs to stand on.
Yeah, I wouldn't be worried about Unis. I mean, I'm not worried about anybody that's in the crosshairs of the
Mm.
SEC because I don't think any judge really looks at anything that the SEC is doing is as legitimate. But yeah, I wouldn't be worried about Uniswap. I think they'll turn out just fine. If anything, though, like you, Ewok, I just hope they learn a lesson here. I just want them to
Yeah.
learn a lesson that it's like, oh, okay, you cuddle up with the big boys and stuff like that and think that they're your friends, and then they just take you out back and shoot you in the back of the head.
Yep.
Let that be a lesson to you. What are you actually in this for? So, and it's just funny to see the bankless boys and everybody come after, the support of Uniswap right now. But if it happens to anybody else, it happens to Richard Hart or whatever, thank you, SEC, for doing your job. Finally, you go after somebody who deserves it. It's
Sounds
just
like their estrogen peeled off onto you there for a
well,
second.
I was being that was my imitation
I know.
of I don't remember their names. They
I
remind
don't
me of
care to learn them.
they remind me of the South Park had an episode a few years ago of the Hardy Boys was an old like they were two like spy guys. My dad
They were
actually used to read their
detectives.
books.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. My dad read their books back in the day, and they called them the Hardley Boys on South Park. And I'm not going to go into too many details of that episode, but the Clue Goo is flying, and that's what the Bankless Boys remind me of. So shout out anybody in the chat if you remember the Hardley Boys episode of South Park. Just do me a favor and type in Clue Goo in the chat. I appreciate it. All right, so that's what's going on with Uniswap. Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. I don't think there's anything to worry about there at all. I think the SEC is basically an entity that we could ignore at this point. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
so
No one cares.
yep, that is that. I want to get your take on this. So RH the other day, we're always kind of encrypting his tweets and trying to figure out like what it is he's really talking about and things like that. So he did tweet about PDI, and I cannot help but say it this way because Sami does it all the time, and he's programmed my mind this way. But penis wrapped Bitcoin, as he calls it, but it's the Pulse wrapped Bitcoin version, PWBTC on PulseChain. But Richard tweeted about both of them the other day. Obviously, PDI people went nuts upon reading the tweet, and I'll try to find it real quick and say, see, he's legitimizing it. Like this is what we thought all along. He's telling people to buy PDI and get behind it. So, of course, they're going to say that. Others with, I think, what might be a more sensible approach are saying, like, well, he's trying to get people to realize that they have copies, again, on PulseChain that they can come and, whether they dump it or whether they get engaged with it or whatever, they have these copies on PulseChain that have both done very, very well. Obviously, PDI and PWBTC has done really, really well too, especially recently. So I don't think he is necessarily condoning buying them. I definitely actually don't think he's saying that, but he wants to bring people to the chain. What to make of this? And then we didn't get a chance to talk too much about you kind of changing your outlook on PDI last week, just a kind of quick segment, Ewok. But I'll just read Richard Hart's tweet on this. He just said, is this the right one? Or am I reading the right one or the wrong one? Nope, that's not the right one. But I don't want to waste time. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that he was actually, talking about like condoning buying PDI, or what do you think he was talking about here?
Again, I think we're in the washout phase. I think he wanted people to realize that they have some DAI and it's over here. And for those people that realize it and be like, oh, free money, let's go sell it. I think he wants to wash those people out too. The more and more that I hear, and this is kind of moving on to why I decided to jump in. And I'll tell you, because I do respect Axis. One of the people I respect in this community the most, probably, for the work that he does and the knowledge that he has. I was listening to him, I don't know, it was a week or so ago before I decided to get some. And the things that have been done with the contract before the fork happened, before PulseChain actually launched, there was work done with the group from Maker to do some things to the contract. There was money paid to Maker for that. So my belief is that he was trying to get people to come over here, see what they had, and say, hey, sell it, please get rid of it now. I would rather some of these people, do that than some of the big holders come in and realize that if it does go up a lot, they'll have a lot more value and extract it and kind of defeat the purpose of it. Again, I think there's a lot more going on and in play than what people are really aware of. And I was blind to it for the longest time. I just thought there was a bunch of people that, doing this as a meme coin type thing. And, being blind to what happened. And I had no idea. And now I think it's very interesting. I think there are ways to, and it's very deep, and it's a lot for me to even explain that would even make sense. But the amount of wrapped Ethereum that was on the chain at the time of the fork that became PulseChain, because all of the Ethereum that was on the chain became Pulse. So there's all that, and then there's the wrapped Ethereum that also had value. And all of that stuff kind of goes into the backing of the DAI. So it's kind of how the DAI is minted, right? When you get DAI, you put kind of collateral into the Maker DAO, and it mints your DAI. And then when you turn it back in, whatever, it burns it. So that's kind of how it functions. It's a collateralized coin. So that function, though, was turned off. There is a switch where you can turn it on and off, and that was part of the upgrades or whatever that were done, because it can't mint new yet, because there isn't a value that's set. I think once it reaches that point, it will be turned back on. So it's interesting. And that's one of the things that I had said why it would never peg, is because it didn't have that. It didn't have that functionality. Little did I know that there was work done on the contract to give it that functionality and a switch to turn it on and off. So, now that I know that, it changes perspective a lot. And, I encourage other people to, not necessarily just believe me, but look into it for yourself too. And it is very deep. And I think it is maybe one of the plans. Now, I don't think this Maria, the dev, the 414 dev or whatever, and Richard, I don't think they're working together. And I did hear Axis say that this was attempted on another chain, and it didn't work. So,
Mm.
you know, I don't know the chain that it was attempted on, so I don't know the background if the chain just kind of didn't pan out, and they couldn't get any backing for it. But again, it'll be interesting to see how it works. But yes, I'm on the PDI train. At least I bought a few, and we'll see what happens.
You're on the ride. Yeah. I was
Jumped on for the
lucky.
ride. That's the top.
I was lucky enough to buy at the big pullback after the mania last summer, late summer, fall, and had gotten a 10x or so out of it so far. So I was pretty happy to see that. And
Yeah,
yeah, I
nice.
mean, I'm going to ride the rest of it. I mean, the rest of the way. I'm very interested to see where it goes. We've talked about a lot on this show. People usually shit on us in the comments if it's a clip later on or something like that. Maybe people that have done the research that you just kind of espoused right now, Ewok, that we hadn't done at the time. I mean, either way, whether you know all that stuff or not, or you just see that there's like a burgeoning community about it that is hell-bent in believing and seeing all
Yeah.
this stuff, it really doesn't matter to me. Like, to me, it's just like, okay, well, wow. I mean, these people are rabid about it. It's an interesting narrative. I want to be involved in some way. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, really. So,
yeah.
So good stuff. And yeah, hopefully, I hope we do see that narrative. We don't even say world's largest airdrop or anything like that anymore. Now, PulseChain.com, if you would link it on Twitter, I believe that's still like the interface that comes up if you were like commenting on somebody to try to promote PulseChain or whatever. But I think it's Richard's attempt to try to get people over here more to see what they have, because there's probably people with very large bags that have something over here that's done well that they have no idea about. So,
well, GoPulse has a little campaign out too, where they have something where you just plug your address in and you can see what you have over here. So it's nice that they have that as well.
It would be fantastic to see that narrative in some way come around in the bull market. I'm just wondering if maybe we haven't seen, if maybe like there needs to be a bigger season for Pulse for, whatever, one of these big things catches to where like a bigger channel starts to become a little bit obsessed with Pulse. Not that we haven't seen that here and there. Obviously, Ben Armstrong talks about it, and then like Donovan, is entrenched within the ecosystem and stuff like that. But I'm talking like, Ran or who knows who, whatever.
Right.
Not that we need that, not that I care about that. I'm just saying that like something I think has to catch on to get it really in people's eyes as much as Hex was the last bull market. And I think that may be when we see some of that stuff of people coming over here like, holy shit, I've had like this bag of this over here and I never knew it. And now we're in the bull market and now it's worth like tens of thousands potentially or something.
Yeah,
so.
It's pretty cool. And that is one thing that green candles will bring. There are plenty of traders out there that some of these hexagons and pulsekins, whatever, they go into their chat, throw them a little super chat and say, hey, look into this coin. And they bring it up. And when there's green candles, they're like, holy shit, this looks really good. And I remember several of them that happening last cycle when Hex was doing its run up, and they were very moderate people. They like it or not, this is what's happening. This thing's going crazy, and they would talk about it. So that type of thing, it all adds up, right? It's compounded between several of them. It'll take that, but yes, I think it'll happen again, and it will catch wind, and then people will be over here and be like, that's pretty cool. Everything works. It's fast. It's cheap. It's all these are like a ERC or a PRC contract that we can deploy stuff on. One of the other things that's happening right now, I don't know if we intended on mentioning it or not, but with the blockchain conference going on, you have all the highest of stakes documentary on all the TVs on Emirates Air. So all those people got to see it, or maybe they didn't watch it. Who knows? Now they're getting flooded. But
they may never make it back now. But yeah,
from what I understand, is one of the bigger supporters or sponsors over there of that event that they're having. Sun mini meal, something meal. I
I
forget
was
what it
going to
was
get
called.
into it. Yeah, I can. Yeah. So essentially, so if you guys did miss this that Ewok's talking about, so and it was pretty much flooded on crypto Twitter the other day, not by hexagons or whatever, but by people that were going to this summit. It's
Yeah.
the blockchain summit or whatever, World Blockchain Summit that's in Dubai right now.
Yep.
Yeah. So the highest of stakes was pre-programmed right there as the default, almost like screensaver, like, or like if you went on to Netflix or something and it's like, oh, this is the show, like Tiger King or whatever they're promoting at the time. The highest of stakes was just right there on every single monitor throughout these flights for everybody that was going to the summit, which is awesome. I mean, like, there's
Yeah.
plenty of pictures on Twitter of like people, like big time influencers with huge followings, either bitching, complaining, or just being whatever about it being on their monitor and sharing it, whether it was positive or negative. There's
Right.
shots of like the entire flight deck with like it on all of the monitors, which is just so funny to see.
Richard Hart with a crown.
Yeah. But to what your point was, so the main sponsor of the World Blockchain Summit that is hosted in Dubai, April 21st and 22nd, I didn't realize it wasn't until then. I guess people are still flying in now.
Yeah.
One day after the halving, is a company named Sun Mini Meal. That sounds like a nice meal service, that you would get delivered maybe every month and make something. I don't know. But their token is UN on PulseChain. Soon Minimal is a startup company based in Switzerland worth 100 million and is growing faster than Red Bull. Connect the dots. PulseChain is going to be premiered in front of the World Blockchain Summit. That comes from OX Stylo. I got that on Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, really interesting. And it is there. And Dubai is underwater now. Literally, the airplanes look like they are landing on water, like it's some kind of a Jesus type intervention type thing going on there. But so these people may not make it back, but they did get to see the highest of stakes before the end anyway. But yeah, so what do you make of that? It's very interesting. Just wild to see that. And I have to look into that UN token. I haven't really done that yet, but what do you make of all that, Ewok?
Well, I think it's pretty cool. My reaction though is I want to see some of those people saying that they watched it, and
Right.
I want some honest reviews from them. You know, I think it would be good to anybody that posted a picture. If any of you hexicans want to kind of troll any of them, go under them and say, "Hey, did you watch it at least? And what did you think?" I'm very curious to hear some responses from them, because it was well done, whether you like Richard Hart or not.
Yeah.
It was a well done, well put together documentary, and it wasn't all a fluff piece. It wasn't. People may have thought that going into it, but it wasn't what most thought it was going to be. So yeah, I'm very curious to see that, and I think it's getting the name out there again. It's name recognition. Most of the time, it takes 7 exposures before somebody feels comfortable with something, and it's just another one. They're going to hear about it. They're gonna eventually see it and try it. So I think it's pretty cool that token is exclusively launched on PulseChain, and it's just one more thing to get the name out there. I thought it was well executed marketing thing to put in front of people on a however long that flight is. What is it? It's got to be a 8-hour flight, probably
Yeah, I gotta
6-hour
imagine
flight.
that's a long one.
I would imagine.
Yeah. I just put the chart from Dex Screener into chat for the UN token, and yeah, it actually has been flying up since about April 7th against USD and against Pulse. So yeah, its chart was basically just kind of sideways since it launched in September, and then April 10th just started to skyrocket to new highs, which we sit at right now, and it's going real hard against Pulse right now after being down only basically since the
Yeah.
beginning. So yeah, pretty interesting. Yeah, I want to see some of those people coming back and like maybe what their thoughts are on the documentary, because now it's to the point where like, look, I mean, you're seeing Hex on there. Now, those people probably know, well, maybe they don't. I was going to say they know a little bit more of what's going on than just like, oh, I pull up the eHex chart and there it is. Maybe they know about PulseChain. I don't know. Probably not, actually. But, most people that watch that are going to go pull up the Hex chart and see like, oh, okay, it died. You know, I mean, that's pretty much what people are going to think now, because you
Yeah,
look at that token, if you're looking at just text on Ethereum, and it's like, oh, okay, well, it's totally down here now. And it's like, well, you know, there's a different hex now. And I know they talk about PulseChain in it and stuff like that, but it's an interesting conversation. But either way, the point of that movie was an attention piece. And I agree with you 100%. It is a well done film. I think it definitely is. There's
yeah,
some stories I would have rather not be pursued as much as they were. Which I think some other people agree with, but it's entertaining, and it's very well done
sure.
otherwise. So, um,
You had to pick some, right? I mean, I know there
mhm,
were a lot of people that were cut out. Nerd Girl was one of them. Johnny Chaos was one of them. I know they all had parts
yeah,
that were not used. So you know, yeah, I I think it definitely opened up a door for a second one. The problem is everyone's kind of down really bad right now and trying to DCA, and they don't want to pay for a film. So,
yeah,
you
I'm
know,
good on that.
maybe on the next bull run or whatever, when people have paper gains again and aren't afraid to spend a little money, we'll get a second one.
Yeah.
Could,
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and I'm interested to see what these people do say about that film if they do get back from Dubai, and you know, are we're thinking about all you guys over there. So hopefully that weather clears up a little bit.
yeah,
Um, Boy, I think that pretty much wraps it up. If you wanted to, we had two other things. One of them is too long of a conversation I don't want to get into to end the show. But I think if you want to, Ewok, we should probably mention what's happening with Coast right now. I'll let you take the reins on that. We talked about it before we went on the air.
yeah,
But we had some news with, so, you know, for those of you keeping up, OX Coast is, you know, a great way to get on ramped onto PulseChain. Basically, without using a bridge, you can just get onboarded into Pulse directly. They've kind of had their service on pause for weeks now, as they had no issues with them internally, but basically one of the banks that they were dealing with, they went out and sought all these other banks and now have, as they say, over 10 that they're ready to onboard. So there's going to be lots more functionality to Coast whenever they come live again. That seems to have been a little bit slowed more than they originally thought. And I don't know how much one has to do with the other, but the CST Coast stablecoin depegged this past Friday from $1. And so I'll just leave it up to you, Ewok. How close are they to going live with these 10 new banks? And what's the current status with that? And what do you make of this depegging, and what may be happening here? I know they put out a tweet about it as well.
yeah. So I will read a little bit of it. I'm not going to read it word for word,
Yeah,
but they said payment rails were operational. They're in a position where they could turn it on. However, they want to uh, have a little bit more stability, redundancy, and reliability through the next few years. So I'm not really sure if they could turn it on, why they didn't, and then work on some of that other stuff in the meantime. Was a little questionable. I have faith in these guys. I think they have a great product. I think they put out a great service, and I like them and I believe in them. The Unfortunately, this is now the Coast token,
right.
and it is down to 83 cents currently. Um, Again, if you believe in them and you want a 83 cent, 82 cent dollar, um, there's a play for you as well, because I do think it will come back and peg. I think they've put way too much into it to go away and not work or not work out, not finish it, whatever. Again, I think if we can get enough people to arbitrage this back, it should still be worth $1. It will be worth $1. But again, it's a very, I would say at this point, low risk play. If you want some 83 cent $1 bills, go for it. Have at it. Yeah, I mean, there isn't much to say. They don't give too many updates right now, other than they could turn it on, but they want to shore up some other things. Maybe now is the better time to do it, when things aren't that busy, whenever prices are down, whatever it is. I don't know how I feel about them being able to, but not doing it. So that's
Right.
my only kind of question about it. But again, I have complete faith that they will launch it and we'll get that dollar peg back. So If you want a fairly low risk play, there's some 83-cent dollars for you.
Yeah, and I'm with you entirely. And I mean, it's a shame that they haven't gotten it back up and running yet. As we're still in like prime DCA zone, and they've been one of the best spots to do that for this ecosystem. For people that are not as accomplished or maybe get stressed out by bridges, because let's face it, I mean, they are something that can be a security risk for you. Like sometimes people don't want to use bridges, and there's certainly ways of making it more secure and using different wallets or whatever you want to do.
Right.
But the ETH fees can be exorbitant sometimes. Not right now. But the regular PulseChain bridge is a fantastic option right now. We've talked about Spark Swap on here, but right now the fees are actually not as good, especially if you're really for any amount. They're just not good compared to just bridging on the regular. If Gwei is below 20, I'm using PulseChain.com's bridge. That's pretty much what I'm going to do. But yeah, we want to get Coast back up and running. Everybody loves Coast. I mean, they're one of the, of all the things that have been built for or on PulseChain, I think they're one that people have been pretty much unanimously behind, and for very good reason. So I'm hoping they get this sorted out soon, and I'm definitely not worried about them. So yeah.
Likewise.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps us up. Great show tonight. I was going to say we typically do this every single Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we have some unfortunate news we need to let you know about. The future of this channel is going to be altered. Okay. You will not see us here next Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And unfortunately, that is because we are now moving to Wednesdays again. So if you were somebody who had viewed this show from the very beginning, this was a Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time show. We are moving back to Wednesday nights. We have some life things happening that are going to kind of necessitate that. Thomas Anderson, I think, got freaked out from my tone there. But we are moving to Wednesday nights, which I prefer. I know Ewok prefers, so we don't have to go up against that Matty Allen guy. So we're back to Wednesdays. It will be a little earlier, though. We're going to start at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, though, starting next Wednesday, April the 24th. Definitely it'll be a little bit earlier in the evening, but yeah, I would much rather be doing this Wednesday night. And it gives us a chance, I think, to get some of, frequently with us doing Tuesday night, some midweek news comes out that we end up having to push to the following week. So this gives us a chance.
We're actually tired of the red candle Tuesdays. We're hoping for green candle Wednesdays.
Yes, that's really the reason for this move. And Patrick kind of tipped us all off to it at the beginning of the show tonight. So yeah, that's the reason for the move. So we will be going back to Wednesdays. So excited about that. It will be an earlier start. So if you're going to catch us live, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Hex Girl was scared there as well. So I'll have to listen to that back and see if my acting skills were on point. But we'll be starting that next Wednesday. So appreciate all of you guys being here. Patrick's Astro and stuff, Hex Girl, KD, Thomas Anderson, Valiant Low Key, a lot of people here tonight. DJ and Moonboy, of course, lots of people. So appreciate all you guys. Ivan Mandip, a lot of good people in the chat tonight. This is a great show. We will be back next week, Wednesday night, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. So for Crypto Ewok, this has been Broke Boi Crypto. We'll see you guys next week right here on the Creed of Crypto live stream. See you guys.